Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a masterpiece. I think we all knew, at least the ones who cared about this game, that Expedition 33 would be good, that it would be something to look out for. And it was. But somehow it managed to exceed my already high expectations, evoke emotions, and provide a video game experience I will treasure forever. It is hard to really find the words to express just how much of an impact Expedition 33 managed to leave on me in just a 50 to 60 hour experience. Right from the beginning all the way to the end, it provides one of the most enthralling stories in a video game I have ever seen in years, and it never lets go. When you have a studio like Sandfall Interactive who puts forth so much passion into their work, where you can just tell when a game has so much soul put into every aspect. It is an inspired game. It is inspiring in general. And a game like this should be inspiring. It should set the bar high for those aspiring game developers who come after. We've had good RPGs. We've had great RPGs. However, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is the best RPG I have played in years. Listen, I am no professional game reviewer who's going to dissect all the nuts and bolts, tell you why you should or shouldn't buy a game. That is not this video. But I will try to articulate to the best of my ability on why Expedition 33 already managed to leave such a lasting impact on me. So yes, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, the gameplay is absolutely amazing. It's inspired and manages to take everything you love about some of the best RPGs, jrpgs out there, take elements that made those games work and innovate on those ideas to make a formula that they can call theirs. The implementation of the real-time mechanics all feel extremely natural to the turn-based formula. And if you're really skilled at the game, especially when it comes to parrying, dodging, and jumping, you can get past any enemy, any boss of the game regardless of your level. This is a combat system that rewards skillful gameplay. The RPG elements are just as strong, allowing for literally any type of build you can think of on any character. This system is called the Pictos and Lumina. Think support materia in Final Fantasy VII, pretty much passive effects that you can add on any one of your party members, eventually making them extremely overpowered throughout the course of the game. And once you've fully leveled up a Picto, you can add them to your Lumina to keep them equipped forever, even when you don't have the corresponding Picto equipped. And man, once you get to the end game, all of that Lumina will build up to make your party absolutely unstoppable. It isn't a completely new type of system we haven't seen in RPGs before, but I think it complements the turn-based combat, the real-time mechanics extremely well. Seriously, if you're thinking of a build to make in the game but haven't made it yet, it's possible that build can absolutely work. It is made to be extremely experimental, flexible, and I love that. We also have the inclusion of a classic jrpg world map. This is a type of exploration, while not dead, isn't something we see in video games enough. I remember seeing takes that, overworlds just visually don't work with high fidelity graphics. And well, here we are with Expedition 33, a high fidelity game with an overworld, and would you look at that, it absolutely works. I love that the exploration doesn't hold your hand like with a lot of these open world games today that will overflow your screen with a bunch of quest markers, fill the game with needless bloat and busy work that does nothing of substance. Overworlds are simply a good way to give that sense of scale, that illusion of freedom, without actually making a to-scale open world that feels a bit too overwhelmingly large to explore. I think of some of my favorite older JRPGs that use this design of exploration, really a trademark for those games at the time. And what they all had in common, all of those overworlds trusted the player to create their own journey. They didn't place any markers to show you where to go, didn't hold your hand. They simply trusted the player to find their destination. And that's the design philosophy that Expedition 33 adopts once again. It gives you so many optional locations, bosses, and side stories to find on your own. It's the type of world design that I will always love because it's simply a find what you find and miss what you miss type of experience. And that makes multiple playthroughs a lot more enjoyable to go through as a result. And what's crazy is that even while the game has a lot of optional content away from its main story, it never feels like it slows you or the game down. The progression of the game feels extremely tight even with the side content, and it never feels like it's overwhelming you with too much to do, which a lot of games, especially AAA games, can fall victim to in design. In short, Expedition 33 I think perfectly executes on nearly every aspect of the game, and not once did I ever feel bored or annoyed because the game chose to slow down or tried to shove a bunch of miscellaneous fetch quests in my face just because. Now, if you know me, if you've been following the channel, you should know that I love a great story in my games. It has been years since I felt such a strong connection to every facet of a story alone. Not ever since I rolled credits on Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers have I ever been so enthralled, so impacted by what a video game has to say. However, Expedition 33 is that game. The world of Lumière is a tragic one. Its inhabitants live under the constant oppression of the paintress, wherein every year she paints a number on her monolith and every one of that number vanishes in a sea of flowers and ink. This concept is referred to as the gommage. And so in order to combat their fate, they send expeditioners every year to try and slay the paintress, stop her from painting death ever again. This is a story that asks us a pretty dark question very early on. Would you have children in a world that is doomed, where the people of this world know their death is close, celebrating their last day living, saying goodbye to their loved ones, accepting their death gracefully? It is so dark yet so understandably real as we see firsthand how this affects everyone in Lumière, how each individual chooses to cope with this cycle of death. From the very children left behind in this doomed world to our very own party members who detest their parents for birthing them into a world they'll never be able to truly live in. This is a story that lets you know from the start that it isn't playing around, lets you know they won't be pulling any punches. And nothing showcases this better than the end of Act 1.
You promised!
What many people had thought was the main protagonist of the story was a character who's only really in like 20% of the game. It absolutely baffled me later because this is one of the more tame, shocking turn of events in the main story. Gustave's death essentially acts as the catalyst that pushes Maelle into the forefront to paint her as more of a key character in this multifaceted tale. With the death of Gustave, the story introduces us to a character who has quickly turned into one of my favorite video game characters ever. Verso is great as he may look like your typical brooding main character, but there is so much more nuance in his behavior, the way he acts to those around him. It's the same reason why I love Clive Rossfield in Final Fantasy XVI, also played by Ben Starr, because they break the stereotypical dark and brooding archetype that has been seen so many times. Throughout the first act, the story very very subtly drip feeds you hints, gives you subtext to the wider mysteries surrounding the plot, the world we're discovering for the very first time along with these characters. The answers are never forced, they let the player slowly piece together the hidden truths guarded by lies, those who know not that they are not. This insinuation that reality isn't what you believe. Who really is the one painting death and who paints life instead? Are we truly saving those from the tyranny of the paintress, or are we robbing ourselves, those we can still save for the chance to live life? A bunch of subtext like this can be found throughout the entirety of Expedition 33, and it never feels forced in, but something the viewer can unmask for themselves.
On her monolith, she paints a warning for us all, of the few she can save as her power wanes. We all wish for our families to thrive. Your family, however, believes only one can survive. But perhaps you'll find another way. You who have lived amongst us, perhaps you differ from your father and your sister, as I differ from mine. Your mother paints life, whilst your father, death. What will you paint?
It is in the latter half of Act 2 into the epilogue where this entire story takes one of the most insane twists, becomes one of the most unconventional and unique stories in a video game I have experienced in quite a while. This entire world that we've lived in through the eyes of the expedition, this notion that the paintress was the one painting death on Lumière, was all a lie. This world of facsimile, a painted copy made by a mother mourning her son Verso to stave off her grief. I mean, you cannot tell me you got to the end of Act 2 and you weren't shocked seeing Verso just sitting there ready for what was about to come. Seeing everyone you worked so hard to save Gommage right in front of your eyes. All of that hope we had just a few minutes prior now stripped away into despair. But the fact remains that the world we knew, the world we've been fighting for, was an amalgamation of creativity, memories, and loss. All from a mother who can't stand to live in her current reality, trapped in the prison of her own grief. The Renoir that we've been fighting, the masked woman Alicia, the Verso we know, all painted copies of her family and the memory of this mother stricken with grief, Aline. Making sure the memories of her family would never die, she made them immortal, unable to die conventionally or age. This canvas that she creates in the last memory, the last attachment and connection they have to the real Verso. Take Maelle for example, again a key character within this tale, revealed to actually be Alicia, the person who essentially quote-unquote started this cycle, as she is blamed for the death of Verso, causing their mother to use his canvas as a coping mechanism and create the world we know. And so Alicia enters the canvas, tries to force her mother out of this false reality, and is thus reborn as Maelle, living 16 years in the canvas, unburdened by the scars of her previous life until she embarks on Expedition 33. It is only when she finally forces her mother out that Maelle gains her memories of Alicia back. Her mindset at this point is that she can bring everyone back, live not under the threat of the Gommage, but to simply live, to repaint life back into the canvas. However, as Act 3 progresses, Maelle's goal slowly turns from preserving life through art into using art as a way to escape reality, just as the paintress, her mother, fell victim to. And so the cycle of grief continues. Expedition 33. The central theme it conveys is all about grief, and it uses art as a vehicle to convey that message to us. You see, Maelle does have good intentions to help preserve life through art to keep Verso's memory alive. However, in the end, it is ultimately undermined by her own grief, her desire to be with her brother, to live an ideal life away from the scars that afflict her as Alicia, away from reality. And so in the end, they let the player choose. Do you side with Verso to let go of the art, the memories, the grief, and move forward? Or do you side with Maelle, who preserves life through art, keeps her brother's memory alive, but lives in denial, lives a lie? When you really break it down, the underlying themes of the story is a showcase of the perpetual impact that art leaves on humankind. To preserve life through art, but at the same time having that ability to see things as they are, not how you want them to be. Of course, that is why the ending where you choose Maelle is considered the quote bad ending, as it shows a person destroying themselves, unwilling to live their reality and instead choosing to live a fantasy. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 reminds us of that very important lesson. It is okay to keep something alive to preserve the memories of someone special, but it shouldn't keep you from living your life, your reality. And it is within his canvas that Verso realizes this, why he is ultimately the one who chooses to destroy the canvas he created to save Maelle from herself, to stop her from making the same mistakes as Aline did in falling into the cycle of grief.